welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining another one of our live demos. And I absolutely apologize for my voice today. I have been traveling internationally, caught a cold, and I sound like I've caught a cold. So apologies in advance. But we are here today to talk to Natasha. She is the CEO of CLARA, and maybe I'm going to let you tell me a little bit about CLARA in a minute. But thank you for joining. We very much appreciate you joining all the way from the US, very early in the morning. So thank you.
Yeah, I've got coffee and water, so well
Good.
prepared.
I really think I need coffee too. I don't know, but I think I need coffee. And of course we have Joe. He's back. He's been a co-host earlier in the year. He's back on because he's the perfect person to ask questions when it comes to recruitment tools. But Joe's changed jobs over the past month. So I want to hear, what are you doing now, Joe?
Thanks for having me, Jessie. Happy to be a repeat guest. Must have done something right the first time. Hey everyone. So yeah, I'm Joe. I'm now director of AI and automation at Scede. Before I was running Purple, Scede have taken over Purple. My new role, I'm kind of managing our AI program, kind of trying to build our function for the future, which is super exciting. I also run an AI community for recruiters called PromptMates with my good friend Jason Miller.
Join everybody. Thank you so much for joining, Joe. Like I said, perfect person to be joining. You've got the right experience and you've seen a lot of tools as well. So I think, Natasha, this is going to be a fun chat. We're going to get to see your tool. And CLARA are a partner of Stacked. You can find more about them on Stacked. You can also reach out to them. You can find them, reach out to Natasha. She's wonderful. Her team are wonderful. So don't be shy. And how about you tell everyone a little bit about what CLARA is for everyone who doesn't know before we jump into the demo?
Yeah, I love that. In brief, we sit technically in screening and assessment, but really what we're doing is using ethical AI to empower skills-based hiring. And we try to do that at scale for teams who are trying to do more with less and having to work fast and those types of things. So that's the nutshell version. And thankfully, we've got some time to kind of dig into the rest of it, but that's what we're doing.
Amazing. Okay, so let's get your screen up. Let's see
Okay.
what you've got. Get
All right.
going.
Let's do it.
Everyone, that's what everyone's here for. We want to see that. We want to see the tech. We want to
Oh,
know what it can do.
I love it. I love it. Let's see, getting my screen up here, hoping that the technology is cooperative today. As I said, so Clara does a couple of things. So yes, platform, but we do either integrate with an applicant tracking system, and we've got a number of those available, or we sit as a independent standalone tool for companies that are a little bit smaller or who don't like their ATS, whatever. We all know that's a thing sometimes. And so we try to make it as easy as possible. And there are also a couple of ATSs that don't play as well with others. And so they're more of like a one-way integration versus a two-way. So it's a couple of different ways that we do things, but ideally we like to make recruiters' lives as easy as humanly possible. And so we prefer the two-way. But sharing this, where you would land, this is sort of the if you're using Clara as a standalone or as you're getting jobs set up in your organization, you get sort of a high level view. We get to see where do jobs sit across the board, get a little bit of a dashboard, the jobs I'm looking at. If you're an admin, you can kind of just get an idea of what's happening with your team. And so there's some detail level there. Also, if somebody is using us as an independent platform, they can set this up so it's a little bit of like an ATS light. I don't want to be in that world. That's a whole separate situation. But they can set up a landing page that looks like them. They can set sort of things at a company level. So it's sort of a set it and go, or you can manipulate things by the job because we know that there are a lot of differences. So I won't get into all that, but if anybody is interested, obviously we can do a deeper demo at another time. But I do think what matters is when we take a look, we start looking at the jobs, right? Like, let's just get there. So as your team is building out a role, we're trying to move as quickly as possible. So in an integrated situation, we would ingest this information straight out of your ATS. If you're working with us, you can set it up and start from beginning to end. What's the job title? What are the requirements? And I want to talk a little bit about that because when we think about the impact that skills-based hiring can have and like why it's important to do, and why it's hard to do at scale. We're trying to solve for that, right? Like recruiters are amazing at being able to do skills-based hiring when they have time to look at 2,400 applications, or when they have time to really dive into the materials that someone has submitted. And so the way that we're helping to do that is by really setting the sort of measure, and then allowing everybody who comes into that funnel as a candidate or as a recruiter to have the exact same experience. So really trying to not only make this easier for recruiters, but also improve the candidate experience by giving them an opportunity to get beyond their resume and really think about the other things that they bring to the table. So one of the key differentiators for how we operate is that there are a lot of tools out there, and almost every ATS now is trying to like roll something out really quickly that talks about like match, right? Like we could do match, we can float skills up, we do stack ranking, whatever. And there's some value in that, but the reality is if it's based in bias language, right? Or it's just using keywords, we're not fixing the problem. We're actually amplifying the problem. And so one of the things that we've done at CLARA is be really intentional about trying to, and not just trying to, but we know that we're doing it. And so we've got some we've got validation around that, is being able to mitigate bias in the process. And so we have that on both
How
sides.
exactly? Okay, so that's
Yeah.
that's good, but like, what is
How,
that? Like,
what does
what
it
does
mean?
it mean? Like mitigating bias, and like, cool, sounds good, but like, what
Yeah.
does that truly mean, and how is it different from like what's maybe on the market in terms of
Sure.
this space? Because obviously, that's like really, that's what the goal is. At least, what I would want to see is the goal that tech providers are working towards this.
Yeah. So a couple of things that we do. One is we actually started building this before most of the world even knew what ChatGPT was. And I say that because we started our algorithms like from the very beginning with the intention of like filtering talent in that was currently being filtered out by existing systems. So getting well beyond keywords, and making sure that we're looking at transferable and adjacent skills and skill equivalencies and future ready skills. And so bubbling up so we could find more. And it turned out that as we did that, we found that they're really often anywhere from like 5 to 28% more qualified candidates in an existing funnel that are being filtered out by current systems. And so we know that because as we look at and engage with candidates and ask them more specific questions, you know this as recruiters, like when you have a conversation with someone, you understand their skills much better than when you just look at the resume. And so in doing that and helping to do that for everyone in the funnel, not just the folks who get through that first batch of keyword search and match, we find that there's a lot more talent there. And the impact of that is that the folks who have been typically sort of overlooked in those systems are exactly the people we're trying to get into the funnel. They maybe have adjacent industry experience, or they bring a slightly different perspective. And so they help our companies actually be more innovative when they come into our teams. And so it's folks who maybe don't have a traditional background or education. They're coming from an adjacent industry rather than a direct industry. And so finding that more diverse talent, and I use that term fairly broadly in that we're talking about not just race, gender, ethnicity, but we're talking about background and experience as well, which I think really matters. We're able to bubble that up, and I think that matters. And so we built it with that intention from the very, very start. And I think that's one thing that makes us really different than everyone else out there. And in doing so, we built a thing for everyone, and we find that it actually does level the playing field, right? It does the thing that we're hoping to do, but it treats everyone equitably in the process. The second thing, then we have to look at the tech, and I can't get too much in the sauce about that because it's a little bit about how the sausage is made around how we push and pull the data and break it up and analyze it. We're doing that in such a way that we're not feeding any language models. We're really conscientious about data privacy and security. We also are not pushing any information into a system that might be able to be interpreted with bias. So we're making sure that we're also making sure that the data itself that's being pushed is managed in such a way that we're mitigating there. And then when we're putting it back together on the other side, there's also a layer of like, let's take a look at this and make sure that we've audited our processes as we're putting it back together, that we're not amplifying any biases that might be built into things. Additionally, in the product itself, we can actually de-identify names, pronouns, logos and institutions, we can redact years. So rather than it saying, I graduated from undergrad in 94 and I went to college 94 to 98, people will immediately start doing the math and they'll know that I'm turning 50 in March if anybody has a good message for me. But that's happening, right? And so we can redact some of that and help mitigate in those areas as well. So anything you
Interesting.
want me to double click on in any of that?
I would love to know, like, I'm fascinated how like the actual assessment part works. And you mentioned like assessing beyond the CV, which sounded
Mhm.
really interesting. So yeah, I'd love to know, like, obviously you've got like job description requirements or whatever your inputs are, and then you've got what you're assessing them against. So yeah, maybe you could talk through how that part actually works, because
Yes.
And
looks
and
interesting.
just someone asked if you could like zoom in a little bit because the screen's
Oh,
a
sure.
little bit small on the viewer side. Yeah, I think that's
Better?
better. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's
We'll
good.
just we'll kind of pause there for just a second. And Joe, when we talk about assessment, I am actually going to back up just a little bit to the job requirements first, and then we'll talk about the settings, and then we'll look a little bit at those additional inputs. Is that cool if I back us
Yeah,
up?
let's do it. I want to make sure we
Yeah,
have enough time to see
absolutely.
it, so please show how the tool's working.
Excellent. So the job requirements, and I'm going to move my screen a little bit side to side since we're zoomed in so much, but you can see there's sort of what's the original job description. And again, if you're using standalone, you can build this in here, or you can just update. We pull it from the ATS. The reason why this is important is that we can edit those requirements. And as we know, every role changes at some point in the process. And so being able to drag and drop these requirements, moving them, say, hey, this is actually a required experience versus a nice to have experience, required skill versus nice to have skill, being able to move those and making sure that then everyone in the funnel is assessed against whatever that new standard matters. And we're really specific about where those requirements sit. You can edit them, you can change them, you can add them, remove them based on what the hiring manager's needs are. You can hide them; they suddenly are not a part of the algorithm anymore, etc. We can also, some additional information, Joe, and what we're adding is, in addition to the fact that we look at not only the transferable and adjacent skills based on the experience that people have had. We also look at skill equivalencies. So, if I'm at a baking soda at home, I can Google that and find out that, 3x baking powder, club soda, and whipped egg whites give me the same outputs, even though they're very, very different inputs. And so we do that math as well when we're talking about skills on the front end. And so all of that is part of the algorithm that is how we are assessing those materials that people are submitting. The second piece is the additional insights that we were talking about. And it comes in a few different buckets, but the first place where your team would address this and get at information is being able to set up additional follow-up questions. So something that maybe you'd use in a screening interview, being able to take that and ingest it as well. But we send information, and you can turn this off by bucket, but there are 3 buckets. The first one is we're looking at the materials based on these job requirements that you have sent. And so candidates who have soft materials, right, maybe their resume is not very strong or well written, can respond to those questions. Hey, there's a gap here. We have questions about how you developed XYZ skill, etc. We can pull that information into this assessment as well. And then the second bucket are those follow-up questions that you were talking about here, or that your team has potentially added. And then the third set is actually what we call distance traveled. It's a brief assessment, and it looks at the assessment is, I'm going to say questionnaire instead of assessment, because assessment seems like a massive thing that people is a little bit overwhelming, right? And we take a look at that by looking at critical thinking, learning agility, and what we call distance traveled. And distance traveled is made up of 6 aspects. They're grit, resourcefulness, self-efficacy, anti-fragility, proactivity, and resilience. And the reason why we look at that is because that is considering people's experience. It is what they have learned from what they've been through, not so much what they've been through, right? But what they've learned from what they've been through. And the research shows us that those are predictive of more sticky performance. They tend to be, we're talking about folks who are coming in from different pathways into that work. And so taking that information as well as the information that is on their CV or resume and putting all of that together to come up with these match scores. So
You're sorry
yeah,
to jump in, Natasha. You're able to assess those like competencies and traits just based off the like the CV and the screening questions, or it also has then like the conversational data in there as well?
Yeah. So the third bucket of questions that we send. And so we worked with a PhD to develop that assessment. And so we know that we can get at the measurement of those things, and they are predictive of having emerging, medium, or high levels of those types of traits and abilities.
So as a candidate,
Mhm.
sorry, we're both sorry, go Joe, go Joe.
Great.
No,
Go
I was
for
just
it.
going to say, and that's the same things you're looking at for every role, or I can go in and say, like, I'm interested in these ones more than these ones for my role.
You can turn on different elements for different
Okay.
roles. Yep.
And is it so as a candidate, I submit my resume, do I instantly get follow-up questions and the assessment, or is it resume and then it then surfaces people who match from that, and from that I get the follow-up and and this like further deeper like assessment, or is it like every single resume that comes in gets the opportunity to get all those three things if you allow it to, or how does that work for a candidate like perspective?
Yep. For us, best practice is that every candidate gets that assessment.
Mm-hmm.
We do, however, recognize that not everybody is ready to jump into the deep end of that pool. And so sometimes, so you can turn it on at different stages of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do recommend, because frankly, you get more people who are qualified for the role when you have that additional information on them.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have partners who are trying to make the business case in their organization where they start with the sort of, okay, let's just send this to the first, to the top 20% or whatever the case may be. That's not our best practice, but it is, we are able to baby step and get, show the use case in the org to be able to do that. So the way that it works, to your question, Jessie, about where the candidate is having that engagement, is they submit their materials, and shortly, like within a minute or two, CLARA is able to assess that information. And if those follow-up questions are turned on, the candidate is still responsive. So it's happening in real time. So the drop-off rate is very, very low. People are engaged. They like being able to answer it. And again, it's going to depend on the amount of time that they have to engage with that is going to depend on whether or not you've got just the initial match questions, or if you have those follow-up questions, or general questions for the job
Yeah.
turned on,
Okay.
or if you have the assessment.
And
So
all of that is giving you this score, or is this score based on like and does this score change over time as it like
yeah, so
as
that's a
you
great
get more
question.
information, I guess?
Depending on there is a match score no matter if they are answering those questions or not, right?
Okay.
Because we still need to kind of get into, do they meet the requirements? This match score is based on, and in this instance, you can see there are set required experience, nice to have, and required skills are the things that this particular job is measuring. And so they are in those AI settings. Let me actually back to that. You can decide, you can change them. You can, and I apologize, it's bouncing a little bit as we're zoomed in here, but you can change and make those requirements whatever you'd like them to be, and it reshuffles everybody in the funnel. And so we're never leaving anyone out of the process if something has changed with requirements.
So if you're like, actually, we want to have like required experience is way more important for us, and I don't know, or people skills is like the top thing, and
Yep, it's
whatever,
sales.
you can do
I want,
that,
yep,
and it'll just
sales. I need people skills down here at a
yeah.
5. I don't care about education. It's a 0. You can shift these and save them, and it will reshuffle everyone in the funnel.
Okay,
New
interesting.
score. Essentially what will happen is then those folks are dropped into 2 buckets, pre-qualified and not qualified. This just indicates if it's someone new that you haven't yet looked at. And they're in pre-qualified and not qualified specifically because we can't tell you, we need to keep humans in the loop, right? At this point of the game, we're not prepared to just let AI make decisions. So we do put them in buckets that say, hey, these are the folks that do match what you've said you're looking for. And we want to make sure that you take a look at that, nothing's changed, that these are actually, maybe there's something random here that you didn't include in requirements. And so you're saying, oh, actually, I need to change this, right? But you can just very simply drag and drop those people into the other bucket, moves them up. They're now in that qualified bucket, and you can sort of segment them out as like, these are folks
So
that
basically, the human does the from pre-qualified to qualified.
Yes.
Yeah,
One of the
that makes sense.
changes that you would see, you asked about the score and whether or not it ever changes. And yes, A, if you change the requirements or the algorithm settings, or B, if you have turned on the follow-up questions, you will often see that like a little score here, and then a big score here. And that means that this person answered those follow-up questions. You can see what their initial score was versus their score now. And so you can see the improvement or change that they've had by following up with those questions.
Okay.
The other piece
I
that I
want to make
wanted,
sure we get through all of the platform, just that we have 9 minutes left, not that we miss any important parts. So
yep, no, I think that's great. The other piece that I would call out is that a candidate, if they have responded to the assessment questions around critical thinking, learning agility, and distance traveled, they don't get their match score, right? Like that's between you and your team, and between us. But they will get feedback on, hey, here's some things that you could continue to do right now to develop those skills. Here are some things that you could do. Here's how you scored. That information can also be shared with the hiring manager. And so the hiring manager, if you are showing them, this is why I'm recommending this person. Here's their profile. You can share the profile this along with the resume, or instead of the resume. It can be shared through the platform, or it can be shared, printed and shared. And what we love about that is that it then gives them some validation. It gives your team, like, here are some things that this person brings to the table that are in addition to this requirement score. And it's one of the reasons why we think they'd be a great fit for your team. So there's a little bit of validation there. It also shows a requirements match. There's a summary. So all of this is a really nice way to like hand off, without having to recreate a spreadsheet or something like that that says, here are all the reasons why I'm sharing these particular candidates with you. I'll pass.
And does this work for just inbound applications, sorry, or can we put like source candidates through here as well?
Can absolutely put source candidates in here as well. So you just would upload candidates. That button is right here, and it would allow you to just add PDFs, and you could put them in here as well. In 2026, I will say one of the things that we're working on with some of our partners is being able to source from within your existing ATS. And so that's on roadmap for 2026.
What
cool.
There's a few of these solutions around now. What would you say are kind of like your either like USPs or standouts versus kind of other providers of the kind of assessments?
I think a couple of things. One, the depth and breadth of what we're looking at for skills, right? Like most, even if they have sort of enhanced keyword match, that's entirely different than what we're doing. We're looking at 3 different buckets, and we're using neurosymbolic AI, so we're looking at context and language. It's a very robust and very mature model around being able to gather those skills. That's one. 2, we're looking at not just like personality assessment. We're looking at skills assessment. So using resources, being able to connect dots. Can you think critically? And those things are becoming more and more important as we know that jobs are changing, and we don't know what a lot of jobs are going to look like 6 months from now or a year from now. And so as technology is changing that, we need to lean less into, not that hard skills are not important, that's not what I'm saying. But we need to lean more into, can this person learn? Can they pivot? If the job changes in 6 months, are they going to be able to change and evolve with it? And so I think it's very important that that's a differentiator as well. And then third, we are really embedding equity into this process. So for our partners, we work with small teams who are overwhelmed with the number of folks who are coming in the door. We also work with large teams that are dispersed, and there are people everywhere, and they're trying to create some consistency and some equity. And so being able to embed equity into the process in a way that is not only legally defensible, so makes our legal teams happy, but actually does the job that we want it to do, I think that is also a critical differentiator for us right now.
Natasha, you mentioned something about setting the algorithm. What does that mean? Can you maybe show us what that means? I think you said this.
That's what we were looking at here.
This bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, but the first part of that is making sure that as we looked at those job requirements, that we have things where we want them to be, right? That when you edit those job requirements, that the things that are in required are actually required. But again, that changes.
You mean knowing what we want to hire?
I know, right? And because it's hard, and because hiring managers do change their minds, or roles do change, maybe someone else from the team leaves, so we suddenly need something else. Being able to edit this and make sure that everyone in that funnel, and we're maximizing those folks who have already engaged with us, we can do that in this way that everyone is reshuffled. No one's lost. You're not starting from scratch. You can literally just jump back in with those new requirements, and you have exactly where you need to start.
I think it's an important call out how like everything's chunked out here as well, and this is like basically a way to reduce bias, right? Like the more you chunk things out and you're assessing things like on a micro level versus a macro level, like you're gonna reduce the chance of the model getting things wrong. So
Yeah,
yeah, always good to see things chunked out in that way.
absolutely. Appreciate that you recognize that. Thank you. Clearly your background, right? Clearly your background in that. So I'm curious if there are any other questions or things you want me to kind of bounce into or respond to before we've got like 2.5 minutes, I think. I want to be respectful of people's time.
I think for me, it would be interesting, I think, because a lot of the audience is probably in Europe. What's around compliance? I mean, you talk a lot about, wanting to do this the right way, doing AI the right way. Is this your tool? Is it possible to use in Europe right now with GDPR and like AI, EU AI Act, that kind of thing? Maybe a little bit about that.
Yes, the short answer is yes. We are GDPR compliant. We have representation, and we're making sure that we're staying on top of those. We will actually also be rolling out in December. We're going to start monthly third-party audits to make sure that we're also being super compliant there. There are reports that are available to our partners so that they can sort of see that there's this ongoing validation. And things are changing really rapidly. And so we want to make sure that not only is our team thinking about it, but we have an extra set of eyes, both from our legal team and from an audit perspective, that we're constantly making sure that everyone we're working with is compliant, whether it's in the 50 US states that are all changing and have different expectations, or the countries in the, in Europe and around the world that are changing too.
Yeah, great. That's great. Well, I mean, we've got 1 minute left, more or less. So,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Thank you for showing us the tool and, going through how it works and kind of how also, I think this also goes to show like how you think about like what's important about hiring and being equitable and, using AI in an ethical way. And I think that's the future of everything to do with AI. We need to make sure that it's good for the humans, not just good for the pockets of like investors or something like that. So it's important, and I appreciate that that's important to you as well. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Joe, for joining as well, as always. Maybe as a final note, if you are looking to reach out to CLARA, please do so either through Natasha or her team. You can find them on LinkedIn. You can find more about them on Stacked as well. And of course, make sure you also follow Joe, check out his community, PromptMates. It's really cool. They do awesome stuff as well. So please reach out. And we'll see you next time for the next one. I think we've got one more left for the year and then we're done with demos this year. So make sure you join next week's one. And thank you for joining, everyone. Thanks, Joe.
Thank
Thanks,
you for
Natasha.
having me.
Thanks everyone.
Everyone.